my passion is around supporting individuals and helping them identify what's important to them and what it is that they want to create in this lifetime. So really dream together and then drill right down into, okay, I'm going to empower you. I'm going to believe you. Now, what are the steps, right? So what do we need to sort of, what do we need to identify about ourselves? What is the vessel being you? What do we need the vessel to understand? Or how do we need to program the vessel to be able to take you off to those amazing places?
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so collectively we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, changing the way this game is being played. And we are so freaking fired up in this locker room today. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. I have definitely been running a scouting report on his conscious leadership, and I can't wait to share him with our folks. Tracey, are you excited for this interview as I am?
We're excited.
All right, let's get this party started, shall we? So it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce you to my new friend, Kav. He's coming to us from Stride Leadership, where he is the founder. And he actually is a high performance coach like myself. So you can see why I'm so excited to introduce him to all of you. So Stride Leadership is a people development company helping organizations, teams, and individuals unlock leadership capacity and strengthen collaboration. He himself is an ICF certified leadership coach with a track record of coaching executives, emerging leaders, and even athletes. Woo! We're seeing the alignment and synergy now, aren't we? He is known for a values-driven, relationship-centric approach to leadership development, blending practical strategies with a deep focus on authenticity and human connection. Kav, how are we feeling about being in the podcast studio?
It's great. It's exciting. Friday morning, here we are. Sun's out in Vancouver, blue skies, and love spending time with you. And so this is great. What a cool opportunity for us to take a lot of the conversations that we have organically in our connections and actually, be constructive and share some of our thoughts with the world. So yeah, very exciting. Thanks for having me.
That's right, friend. Him and I are definitely in alignment, trying to change the way this game's being played through this human-centric approach to leadership development and training. Nothing but flow in our conversation so far, sir. So where I want to start the flow today is I want you to plug your audience into your mission and some of the backstory in terms of what inspired you to go on said mission.
Yeah, the big stuff right away. I mean, look,
you know how we do.
I have this very, this huge ambition of, changing the way that people hold relationships with themselves, over a lifetime. So very holistically, I'm crazy enough as an entrepreneur. I believe that's sort of essential to the entrepreneurial journey, that you have this, the blue sky thought of making grand change in the world that we exist in. And I just, I fall into that category of people that wants to leave the world a better place, than how it is that I arrived in it. And so, from, the extension from that is my passion is around supporting individuals and helping them identify what's important to them and what it is that they want to create in this lifetime. So really dream together and then drill right down into, okay, I'm going to empower you. I'm going to believe you. Now, what are the steps, right? So what do we need to sort of, what do we need to identify about ourselves? What is the vessel being you? What do we need the vessel to understand? Or how do we need to program the vessel to be able to take you off to those amazing places? And I've been very fortunate, in my time so far in this space to be able to, support some folks on that journey and on that mission. And I think it's, for me, I'm extremely lucky to be able to be a part of that process for individuals. That's not lost on me. And I just happen to love it. that thing that your grandparents tell you, which is, at least mine, find something that you love to do and you'll never feel like it's work. Just, keep your head
Mhm.
down, work hard and show up. And I've just done that, consistently. And it's deeply fulfilling for me. My story, like, why did I end up in this space? Like, why do I end up being this sort of person that is off in the world, with big ambitions and passion and dedication? My own personal story. I'll skip through some of the details, but I'll tell you that I came to a point. My son, 44 for context. When I was 19, I lost my dad. I spent several years in a pretty private, pretty silent struggle. There were, like through my university days, through my college days, there were uh, I learned later. It's like kind of getting into the second half of my 20s, I started to learn and understand that I was experiencing something related to my grieving process, that maybe I hadn't
Mm.
processed to the degree that
Mhm.
I could have. And so I got curious. I got curious and I stepped outside of what I understood my cultural norms to be at home, just kind of the environment that I grew up in, which is to not seek help or support externally because it's all here at home. So we don't, we don't take what it is that's challenging and go share it outside because, we're here. And I was raised by lovely people. Um, and so I decided to, now I'm like 26, 27. I decided to kind of peel back a band-aid that I realized in hindsight that I was wearing, for several years, at that point, 7 or 8 years. And I was fortunate enough, at that stage of my life to connect with two, separate individuals, one of them being a counselor to help me understand my emotional patterns and what was happening for me, for the first time ever, admittedly, right? Like I'm starting to cruise towards my 30s. And I was like, wow, this is the first time in my life I'm starting to unpack and understand, where I'm at and why. And
Mhm.
that was empowering. It was refreshing. It was work. Like it was tough,
Mhm.
emotionally extremely challenging. Um, so that was the work I did with my counselor, and then I got really interested in, okay, I'm learning all these new tools and understanding myself better. What about the application part? Anybody who's familiar with,
Mhm.
at least the counselor that I was working with at the time, that's not necessarily a part of
Mhm.
the process with counseling. And so, we're going back to what's the year now? We're like 2007, 2008, and I go online in Vancouver and I search life coach Vancouver.
Yeah.
And so not very sexy or cool back then, and not very common. And I'm not so sure that that's much sexier today, but definitely back then, fewer and further between. But I
Mhm.
found a coach in Kitsilano, which is a neighborhood in Vancouver, and he had this amazing website up, and so I shot him a message and said, I'd love to meet with you. Is it possible we can meet? And so uh, my experience working with a counselor and then connecting with James, my coach, who I happened to have dinner with last night, which is amazing. 15 years later, we still maintain this incredible relationship together. But I had committed, so I had decided about 6 months into working with James that I was going to give back to the world what these two professionals had provided to me, which was an unbiased, empowering, um, very caring, very empathetic support. And I'd
Mhm.
never experienced that before. Not to take away from lovely people that I had in my life, my sister, my mom, friends, family. But this was unique. It was
Mhm.
unique to be able to go into a room or into an environment and have a platform or a safe space for me to feel and be everything that I am and was, um, across the table or across the room from somebody who would look me in the eye and tell me that I'd be okay. And that,
Mhm.
you know, and so that for me just became it. I figured out my higher purpose early in life. I think I realized, um, yeah, and that's just sort of propelled me on to, again, as this like wildly ambitious entrepreneur and somebody who has this higher purpose of serving humanity. And being a place where people can, stop and ask questions and be curious and tell them that they're going to be okay, you know? Um, yeah, it's a bit of a rant, but that's me in a box.
Mm-hmm. I definitely know because I've heard Kav's story before. Trace, do you have any questions about his story?
Can I give myself permission to explore and figure out what it is and like identify what it is within me that I'm looking to create? And can you be expansive enough to go out and get after that?
How do we give ourselves permission without a father passing away? I know all of our listeners are listening and like, okay, sure, that makes sense in the context of their stories. But what if I'm just on my autopilot, my pre-existing hardwiring and programming, and I, even thinking about making that new choice or that free choice, like get so freaking closed up shop in my physiology and my cognitive capacity? How do we guide people looking to give themselves permission?
Well, I was going to ask a question, but you kind of answered it. I think it's like fascinating that, we say this a lot, like, experiences bring us to where we end up, right? In terms of what we want to do in life. But I find it like interesting. I love your story about, wanting to give back what you received. I think that's just such a powerful thing. And I think a lot of us experience that, but never actually look back and say, this is what I want to do and give back. It's sometimes a lot of us is way later in life. And I find that really fascinating at such a young age that you were able to like recognize that. And I love that experience happened to you, because now, you're able to change other people's lives with that experience. And I think that's like amazing. And I find it really young though. You said you're 44, right? Is that what you said? Yeah. You've been doing this for a while. So it's like really like, I think at 26, 27, I was just getting out of university. So good on you. That's
I
great.
appreciate that. I appreciate
Love
that.
that.
Yeah, the journey for me, of course, of like losing my dad at 19, first year out of high school. Um, ah, yeah, the full circle for me is, the grief and sort of, a lot of the pain. My dad was my hero. Yeah, sort of evolving my life story into this, here I am, 25-year anniversary for dad this year. The fact that I sit here with the two of you, for example, this morning is, man, I'm not sure how to articulate what that means to me. But it makes sense. That I can say with certainty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Trace, that you're asking that, because it's like always a question I get asked when I'm getting interviewed on podcasts. Like, how the heck did you come to this Helm consciously so far upstream? And that's one of the things that I really aligned with Kav on when we first met. Like I'm a spiritual woman, and I really believe that things happen for us, not to us, and that there's purpose to that. Like I think one of the things you and I resonated on when we first met, Kav, was our dads were these like hardcore authority figures, and that model carries the most weight. And so I don't even think I had permission or enough safety inside of me to even look outside that box when he was alive, and of course it's like the most disorienting thing at such a young age to have that completely taken away. But there's also a gift in that. Right? It's like I just tell me if you resonate with this, Kav. I just remember that portion of my 20s where it was like the first time in my life where I got to really connect to that inner voice inside of myself, right? And I got to ask myself, well, what do I want for my life? Like as a high achiever, going through that gauntlet of sports and trying to get into like top 1% academic environments, it was like all laid out ahead of me. I didn't have much choice to be real until my 20s. But
what do you mean? What do I want?
And that to me, honestly, was what made me so emotional and so scared and so disoriented, right?
Sure.
But for those of us that show up to the call and the assignment, right? And we go through that portal that leads us into the possibility thinking, I just also really notice that empaths, we don't believe in useless suffering. For some reason, the way that our energy works with the BAMs, it's like, especially when we figure out a way to transmute that, right, and alchemize that, is that we often come out the other side being like, how do I go make sure that other people don't have to experience that? Or how do I go help people who are experiencing that so we can turn that useless suffering into something useful and meaningful? And that oftentimes informs their sense of purpose in this lifetime. Do you resonate with that, Kav?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I mean, that makes perfect sense. So I think the prerequisite here, or like the important piece to that journey, if one chooses that, is it's like permission based. Like, can I give myself permission to explore and figure out what it is and like identify what it is within me that I'm looking to create? And can you be expansive enough to go out and get after that?
Mm-hmm. How do we give
Yeah,
ourselves permission without a father passing away? I know all of our listeners are listening and like, okay, sure, that makes sense in the context of their stories. But what if
right.
I'm just right on my autopilot, on my pre-existing hardwiring and programming, and I even thinking about making that new choice or that free choice, like get so freaking closed up shop in my physiology and my cognitive capacity. How do we guide people looking to give themselves permission?
Yeah, great question. Important conversation. I'll just sort of lean on to my personal story again. My greatest shifts in life have come from, so chapter by chapter, and I can think about definitely two, maybe a third benchmark, in the last decade or so is it's all related to identity. So it's for me, it was related to who it is that I observe myself and believe myself to be. Um, And when that is, so in these benchmark moments, over the last decade, I recognized that there was a disconnect between where it is that I was and how I was leading myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pull in a big buzz term for me now, excuse me, is self-leadership. So how am I leading myself based on where it is that I am and where it is that I want to be? Because I think everybody, like, look, if we were to, pull in 100 random people into this call today and we were to say, hey, can you tell us, be kind to yourself, but can you tell us where it is that you believe yourself to be, like what it is that you believe yourself to be destined for holistically? So, like in your life, I think everybody can paint that picture. Like everybody, I think, consciously understands and knows that there is another place or another sort of chapter for them ahead. Understanding the distance between where it is that you are now and what that maybe promised land or whatever you want to call it, the space between here and that place, that's where the work comes from. Like, so the work happens in that space. And for me, it was really connected to like undoing and reprogramming and understanding parts of myself that were undoing an identity that I had just sort of settled on.
Mm-hmm.
For example, early years of fatherhood, which is my greatest leadership role, by the way. But early days of fatherhood, I needed to undo what I had, like the box that I had kind of settled into, which was I'm a dad, giving myself passes on things like personal health. Well, no, dads aren't going to be fit in the first couple of years of their kids' lives because they're tending to their wife and they're tending to, the kids. And so how do I have time to work out? So I had like decided these things, which frankly were just bullshit, but I
Mm-hmm.
had allowed myself to make that a part of my identity. Yeah, sorry, at the risk of rambling and not sort of connecting the dots on this, I think on that, the journey and sort of one getting to a next place within themselves, it's
Mm-hmm.
really about you've got to have some deep conversations, right? Like there's an inventory, there is a self-reflection, there's a, introspection that's required. And I don't know, I'm going to say this broadly speaking, I think that scares the shit out of people. And me
Mm,
at one point for sure. So I say that from a place
definitely.
of
Mm-hmm.
compassion and a place of empathy, but it's,
Mm-hmm.
that is the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're starting to dip into my next area of curiosity, unless you have a question about any of that, Trace.
No. Okay.
I feel like this is where we're starting to really get into this whole new hot concept that we're exploring here at the LLP since the summer, which is in and around conscious leadership. Before I add my 2 cents into what you just said in that context, what does conscious leadership mean to you, Kav?
Conscious leadership for me is, I think, is directly connected to this, this ideology that I follow in my own life, which is this concept of self-leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you leading yourself before you go out and try to lead externally? What are you doing for you? And I think if we commit to a path of one commits to a path of leading self,
Mm-hmm.
that brings a level of, consciousness to how it is that you're then extending out into other ethers in your life. So whether it's a team or an organization or a family, it will bring, it can, it should, it will bring a level of consciousness to how it is that you are connecting with others that you want to support. I don't know if that captured it or not, but
Yeah, no, I definitely think like anybody who's talking about self-leadership obviously is consciously at the helm because that's what the helm is, right? Is like being in alignment and in relationship with that core essence or unconditioned self, that authenticity that you and your firm pride yourself on affecting in this leadership development space, right? And then understanding based on everything you said in your backstory in terms of your sense of purpose, right? Your values and all of that being in alignment with how you show up in the world and orient in the world and thus relate to others in the world. And this is where I want to dip into that relational intelligence that you and your firm focuses on, right? It's like, how am I staying so present and available, not only to that which is right in front of me, so I can be super present and create a lot of safety in those relationships and connection, therefore, starting with me, though, right? Understanding how to make sure I'm first consciously seeing myself as the authority, which is where that permission comes from, right? Is like when we actually become conscious as adults, not children, that we actually are the authority, or at least supposed to be. Less than one third of us adults actually graduates to that stage in the maturation process, but that's where the permission comes from, right? Is like when you step to that helm, and I think that's what you and I learned to do when we lost our dads, and to actually be like, oh my God, it's my life, and I'm in charge now, and
yeah,
I gotta decide where to program this GPS and then
yeah,
but then also being able to stick the landing on that, which we know as leaders, especially in these corporate conditions right about now, is so challenging to first see ourselves as the authority. Because
yeah.
if we're stressed by the high fear environments that we're in, obviously that's what takes us away from the helm. That's what takes us away from our consciousness. But to be able to do that in a way where we actually can then start to lead others into this space of safety, even when there's stress all around us.
Yeah.
I'm curious if this is something that aligns with how you would describe your leadership style. And if so, what type of conscious leadership practices do you get down with in your self-leadership?
Oh man, thank you. Some great thoughts, by the way. Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think to recognize and accept the reality that, the self-leadership practice is the beginning and end game. I
Mm-hmm.
use this sort of thought, like I paint this picture in my own mind, and I'll share it with those that I work with as well occasionally. Just a reminder that it's like, hey, it's only you picture like a boxing ring, like there's two of you in that ring, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nobody else in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just sparring with yourself, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I think once that sort of as an idea locks in, and it's like, well, yeah, I what is constructive or what has been constructive for me is to just really dial in on that, which is I'm not in competition with anybody but me, if there
Mm-hmm.
is a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is my duty and responsibility to focus here. So inwardly, um, before even attempting to go out and do it for anybody else. And so always, I think, drawing back to ground zero, which is, where am I at within me? What do I want to extend into the world? We, as you know, at Stride Leadership, which is really a brand that is just the behind the curtains, is all the work that we do is really just an extension of my own lived experience. And
Mm-hmm.
we've just found some, I think pretty interesting and impactful sort of ways of extending that into the work that we do. But it's all really centered around, again, focusing in on oneself. So what it is that we do is we aspire to continue to provide just tools and resources for Susan and Kav and Tracey to be able to lift the hood a little bit on ourselves, gain some insights, some understandings about what it is that drives us. So what we call our motivational values. What happens to us in conflict? So when things aren't ideal, what happens to me? What changes? And not just anecdotally, but we'll provide you with some data. We'll give you a full on sort of, I hate like even using the word assessment is, it's like, because it can give people the heebie-jeebies, is not comfortable for some, but why that's important is it's data. It's things that you can look at and say tangibly, great, here's some information on me. Now, what do I do with that? Right. What we want you to do and what we support you to be able to do is get expansive. So start to consider what comes next. If I have this information and I want to leverage this, or I want to make shifts or changes, great. Here's some tools, here's some resources, and here is somebody to come in and support you as well. Let's dream together. But the promise that I need our participants, or those that kind of, that we white glove service, is that you have to be dialed in on you, right? So there has to be, the prerequisite here is you have to learn to love and accept yourself based on what it is that you are learning about you. And then we can extend capacity and help you sort of create more. Um, yeah,
I want to dig into that a little bit, don't you, Trace?
Mhm.
In terms of the expansion of capacity. This is something that we've been riffing on here in studio a lot this summer. Is
cool.
like is and why we believe that conscious, leadership is going to change the way the game's being played is because leadership is all about capacity. It's exactly like sports for me as an athlete. I had to get in the gym and I had to train my muscles so I could develop capacity in my muscles, right? Power, strength, stamina. These are resources that I needed readily available to me out on that ice on game day. But
Yeah,
for leadership, how is it any different? Right? We have to train our capacity and know that, yes, that might be getting in the gym as a starting point, because we definitely need strength, power, and stamina to keep
sure.
striding in our leadership, right, Kav? But from a mental and emotional standpoint, this is what we're really talking about in terms of why it's so game changer to double down on our consciousness training, is because the more self-awareness we develop, the deeper our self-knowledge runs. And the deeper we can get in our self-knowledge, the more new choice will be available to us, right?
Agreed.
And that's where all of this, in terms of what you're talking about in the self-leadership arena, that's obviously what starts to open up more and more capacity that we can then ripple out to our folks.
Yep.
Is when we can actually see where the new choices live in our own experience and then become so present and available with our intuition pointed on our people's experience. That's where we can then start to illuminate where their blind spots might be hiding out, or where they need to bring some of that self-awareness, that consciousness too, in order to develop more resources and more capacity in the world. Would you agree?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And
Yeah.
so my next question that I want to make sure we ask you before we let you go is that I just restated what our claim is. We believe that that type of leadership development and training is going to become the table stakes here in 2026 and beyond,
Yep.
because we don't understand what this is going to look like in a world where we have to reimagine our orientation towards work because of all of the acceleration of change that's coming down this pipeline with AI, with these new generations coming into the workforce that just won't be led in unconscious ways.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in terms of what you're predicting in and around the future of leadership development? Do you agree that this is something that we're all going to need to develop in our capacity as leaders?
I believe so. I mean, look, I follow this ideology that everybody's a leader. What it is that you do with that, and what it is that individuals do with that is going to vary. What I believe the next generation, so I think about my kids at 7 and 9 years old, and a lot of the initiatives that I'm driving today are in support of them. It's not about me anymore. I've told you this before, Susan. It's not about our generation, frankly. We will continue to support those, multi-generational, but it's really about the next generation. How are they going to engage in some of the stuff that we're talking about today? Can we build platform? Can we build environments? Can we build opportunities for them to learn, embrace themselves, and then go out and extend that and live impactful lives? Look, I think if we continue to create those opportunities for individuals, you would use the term GPS, like pinpoints on a map earlier on. I think it's exactly that. If we can provide opportunities for people, humans, to identify what their pinpoints are on a map, so start to understand, and I'm referring to values. If we can help people understand what their values are and what drives them and what motivates them, they will live, and I can say this now with certainty, I'm a couple thousand hours into doing what it is, that I love to do. They will live a richer life. So, the work that, and very, very pridefully, and again, this is the part that I love, is finding ways to ensure that resources and programs and conversations are available, um, for people to identify those things about themselves. And then, yes, my young children go off and create incredible things. But the responsibility that we hold in our space is to ensure that we're creating those learning opportunities, right? That we're creating those safe spaces for people to come and really sound out what's happening for them. So I have a whole bunch of, yes, technology is evolving, and man, are we ever experiencing some times in terms of, technological growth. And I'm sure every generation says that. I'm old enough to remember the answering machine at home, and my grandma's house, the rotary, the dial. What is it called? Is it a rotary phone? Something like that. But those ones, you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, totally.
But I think what will withstand time is the human connection. That is my hope. But it is also going to be what I will continue to, God willing, I have a lot of really good years ahead of me. I'll continue to double down, triple down on ensuring that the human to human connection is alive and well when it comes to our space. So again, we are all leaders. I believe that to be true. How it is that you extend that and where it is that you extend that into your life and into your world, I support you. I'm behind you. So let's keep going. Whatever it is that you want to create and design, fantastic. Your prerequisite, it's a term that I've used a number of times already today, is that you honor yourself. You have to prioritize you. And in some cultures, in some environments, for some individuals, that's almost dirty language. What do you mean? No, I'm selfless. I want to be out there emptying my bucket with everybody around me. And that's okay. I'll be at home and I'll be exhausted, and I'll do it all over again tomorrow. The trick is you honor you before you go and honor anybody else. And I hope that as a thought, as an idea, is something that withstands time. And I hope that the Tracey Allens and the Susan Hobsons and the Kav Salhs of the world dial into that and continue to be stubborn about getting that work into the world and creating opportunities for engagement where we can just go out and continue to do amazing shit in our own lives and extend it into others.
Boom. Trace, anything to add?
Well, I just want to say thank you to both of you for doing all the work that you do, because without people like yourselves being able to create that opportunity for people to get to know themselves and to actually make room for that capacity, because I actually, believe that that is what helps us be conscious. Because I know when we have 20 balls in the air and we are trying to find our way to keep our breathing going while we're trying to manage everything else, is without that work that you guys are supporting everybody in the world with, and there's many of you out there, this work is really hard to do by yourself. And I don't think without a coach to help hold a mirror, to help you see where you need to do the work, is without that, I think it's really, really hard. And I think back of, I'm older than both of you, but, coaches back then didn't exist. And you had to just kind of figure it out, and a lot of us, and I know Kavi's saying like this generation, maybe, you're doing it for the kids, but I think Susan would share this because we talk about our kids a lot, but we know that the work and the things that we do in our household and how we lead our families impacts how our kids' lives will look like. And I always say to my kids, like when I see teachers and people in their lives not stepping into the right roles that they should be, it's like, don't make me have to put them in therapy for the rest of their life. You don't get to treat my kids like that, because you're affecting them and you're affecting their space and how they're going to show up, because now they are going to have an experience that is going to maybe change the way that they can move through their lives. And so I just want to say a big thank you to you both for doing all the work that you do, because without that, we wouldn't be able to create that space and get into like what we need to be able to show up as leaders. And you both probably work with hundreds of leaders, and you help us every day get out there and do the best we can, and to create space for our people and hold mirrors for our people and teach us how to show up. So I am super grateful for you guys.
That means the world. Thank you for cranking the imposter syndrome meter up on me today.
Oh,
I don't know who you're referring to, but that was lovely.
there's our humble friend.
Thank you, Tracey. That means the world.
Yeah, and it's the honest truth. I think Matt said this when he was in here a couple weeks ago, right? But it honestly is the most beautiful co-creation. This art and science of coaching and the flow we get to experience as we're coaching you through everything Kav's talking about today. Sure, we're holding the mirror up for you, but please believe that be bouncing back our way too. I don't ever leave a session not being changed or inspired or moved in some significant way that keeps me ascending towards my future highest potential self.
That's the hack. It's a little
It
secret.
really is,
Little
right?
secret that Susan and I keep, Tracey, and that is in all of the opportunities that we have to support humanity, independent of where it is that they come from, is that we get to self-reflect as well, because we get to work with some fascinating people that live really cool lives, and yes. So again, I think it's really good service all around, and so you sharing that, I think, with Susan and I this morning is, continues to, to keep us inspired, which is really important. It's a very important part of, I think, a coach's journey. So yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And like we've been talking about today, I know we're talking about all of this conscious leadership, maybe slightly different than what we're talking about as coaches, but we're all coaches. I believe leaders are coaches. And Kav just said we're all leaders, right? And so we're all in this beautiful co-creation. And I think that is the call right now, in fact, and the call to collective purpose for this collective consciousness is that we're all supposed to be co-creating in this locker room right now. Because yeah, this world is about to change. It already is changing at such an accelerated rate. And if we aren't conscious in terms of the impact that can have on our human being experience, on our amygdalas, then that's what takes us out of co-creation, right? That's what disconnects us. And so how inspiring is it for us to be able to co-create this conversation in our locker room today, and then ripple effect that out through the airwaves right now? Because I know all our folks listening to this are definitely going to be answering that call to conscious leadership themselves. That's where I want to land this plane. It's always the attitude of gratitude for all of you who are inspiring this level of co-creation here in our locker room. And yeah, since we're in the year of co-creation, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback. We want to know if this conscious leadership concept is hitting the mark. We want to know where your curiosities lie. We actually want to hear about your ripple effect and where that's showing up in the world when the world needs it more than ever. Please make sure to hit us with that feedback. That feedback is gold and is obviously a huge part of what's driving this innovation here for us at the LLP. For all other curiosity in and around our locker room programs, our leadership development and training, our conscious leadership coaching certifications, you can find all of that over at the website, elitehighperformance.com. Kav, any final words for our folks before we drop the mic today?
Be kind to you. Take care of you. And go take care of others. Thank you so much for having me on.
I love it. Thank you, Kav, for coming in and sharing your brilliance with our audience. I know we just getting started with our flow. For all of you out there, thank you for listening, and we'll see you back here in the locker room next week.